Welcome, dear listener, to Legendary Sleep. Tonight's tale is Gilgamesh's midnight quest, a timeless journey born in ancient Babylon, carried on clay tablets across millennia, and now whispered to you beneath a blanket of stars. This is the story of Gilgamesh, the mighty king of Uruk, 2/3 god and 1/3 man, of Enkidu, his wild and loyal companion, of gods and monsters, wisdom and fear, of a journey that begins with grief and ends, perhaps, in something even greater than immortality. The restless crown. In the heart of the ancient world stood the walled city of Uruk. Its towers pierced the sky, its ziggurats whispered to the heavens, and its streets pulsed with life. Markets, prayers, laughter, and song. Yet within this man of might, there stirred a silence, a hollow ache beneath the laurel of his triumphs. Though his hands had built mighty walls and temples, and his name echoed through the lands, sleep came to him like a stranger. Night after night, he wandered his chambers while the city slumbered. Dreams of a friend lost to dust haunted him. Enkidu, the wild man turned brother, had once brought joy, challenge, and kinship to his life. But no strength, no plea, no crown could save Enkidu from the touch of death. Now Gilgamesh feared the silence that would one day claim him too. Not battle, not plague, but the stillness beyond breath. So it was that on one moon-drenched night, cloaked in lion's fur, Gilgamesh slipped through the gates of Uruk, his sandals silent on the stone. He sought not war or wonder, but answers. Whispers told of Utnapishtim, a man who had escaped death's embrace. If there was any truth to the tale, Gilgamesh would find it. And so the quest began, a king chasing a whisper beneath the watchful eyes of the stars. The mountains of dusk. Gilgamesh travelled far beyond the cultivated lands, where the fields turned to dust and the songs of farmers faded into the hush of wilderness. Days blurred into nights, and nights into an ageless grey, as the mighty king pushed beyond the limits of man. He walked through lands where no travellers dared, where wind howled with voices too old to name. His lion cloak caught the scent of storm and blood. Sometimes he passed shepherds who bowed in silent awe. Other times he saw no soul for days, only the watchful eyes of vultures and the distant roar of unknown beasts. One night, after many long days alone, he reached the foothills of the mountains called Mashu. Twin peaks, high as the stars, guarded a gateway no mortal had crossed. It was here that the great sun disappeared each evening, plunging into the tunnel beneath the world. Standing sentry at this sacred pass were the scorpion people, creatures half man, half beast, with eyes that gleamed like burning coals and voices like rumbling stone. They saw into the soul, and what they saw in Gilgamesh gave them pause. "No mortal passes into the mountain," said the male guardian, his tail twitching with silent menace. "This is the road of Shamash, the sun god. Its darkness would swallow you." "I do not seek light," replied Gilgamesh, "only truth." The female guardian gazed at him with something like pity. "Your face carries the weight of sorrow, and your feet the dust of mourning. You may pass, but do not expect to return." With that, they opened the way. Gilgamesh entered the tunnel, 12 leagues of perfect darkness. Not even the memory of light could follow him there. melted. His breath became his only anchor. He counted steps until numbers lost meaning. Each league passed like a dream wrapped in silence. And then, light, soft at first, the golden bloom of a garden not of this world. Jewels hung like fruit from trees of crystal. Fragrant air stirred leaves that shimmered with inner glow. This was the garden of the gods. But Gilgamesh had no hunger for beauty. Not now. He stepped through wonder, past marvels mortals could not imagine, until he reached a small cottage near the edge of the divine grove. There waited Siduri, keeper of secrets, alewife of eternity. Her eyes were deep as wells, kind and sharp in equal measure. She watched the king approach, her hands never stopping their gentle work of grinding herbs into drink. "You carry death with you," she murmured. "It walks in your shadow." Gilgamesh bowed. "Then tell me how to outrun it." Siduri studied him for a long moment, the silence between them thick as honey. "Perhaps," she said at last, "you seek not escape, but understanding. Come, rest, drink. Tomorrow I will send you to the ferryman, but tonight let your heart be still." And for the first time in many days, Gilgamesh sat beneath the jewel trees and let the silence cradle him. He did not yet know the shape of his path, but he had crossed into the realm of answers. The ferryman of shadows. Morning in the garden of the gods arrived not with birdsong or dawn, but with a pale wash of golden mist. The jewel trees glittered as if dew had kissed every branch, though the air was dry and sweet. Gilgamesh awoke slowly, the weariness of his long journey resting slightly lighter on his shoulders. Siduri waited near the water's edge, where the silver ripples of an otherworldly sea lapped at polished stone. She pointed to a narrow boat carved from blackwood, its form sleek and ancient. Near it stood Urshanabi, the ferryman. He was tall and robed, with a face weathered like driftwood and eyes like deep water. Around him the stone ones stood silent, strange beings who shimmered with unnatural stillness, guardians of celestial order. When Gilgamesh approached, they stirred, sensing the presence of a mortal. Without hesitation, perhaps out of fear or pride or sheer exhaustion of heart, Gilgamesh struck them down. Their forms shattered like obsidian, leaving the ferry unguarded. Urshanabi turned slowly, frowning. "You have broken what keeps the balance," he said, his voice low as thunder beneath a lake. "These stones were not weapons. They read the currents of the waters of death. Now we cross blind." Gilgamesh said nothing. His fists still trembled, perhaps from rage, perhaps from regret. The ferryman regarded him with an ancient sadness. "You seek Utnapishtim, but your hands are too quick to destroy." "Because time is quicker still," replied the king, "and it hunts me." Urshanabi gave a single nod, then gestured to the shore. "Cut punting poles from the forest. 100 you will need, and then we may cross." All that day and into the next, Gilgamesh worked. Sweat mixed with sap. Muscles burned. He labored without complaint, for he had no kingdom here, only purpose. When the poles were cut and bound, they pushed the boat into the water, and Gilgamesh stepped aboard. The sea they entered was no ordinary water. The waters of death lay calm, yet to touch them was to end. No breeze stirred them. No fish broke their surface. It was a mirror of endings, stretching to a horizon of silence. Gilgamesh used each pole only once, letting it fall away after a single thrust. careful never to touch the cursed waves. One by one, the poles vanished behind them. The boat drifted forward through a void that felt like the edge of the world. Time moved differently there. Hours passed like moments, or was it the other way around? Gilgamesh thought of Enkidu then, of laughter in a forest long gone, of battles and brotherhood, of the sound Enkidu made when death came. He did not speak of it to Ushanabi, but the ferryman saw the grief in his silence. And at last, when the final pole had vanished into the depths, a speck of green rose on the horizon. An island, still and quiet, untouched by time, the home of the undying. They reached its shore as the stars blinked into a lavender sky, and there, standing beneath a tree heavy with red fruit, was Utnapishtim. He did not look divine. He looked tired, human. His gaze held centuries, but his shoulders bore the simple peace of one who no longer ran. Gilgamesh stepped forward, heart pounding. He had found the one man who had outlived death, but answers would not come quickly. Utnapishtim waited, and the wind, for a moment, held its breath. The man who remembered the flood. Utnapishtim stood in silence, his gaze resting on Gilgamesh as the wind moved through the trees like a whisper from another age. No greeting, no welcome, only the weight of time pressing gently down. Gilgamesh waited, unsure whether to speak. He had crossed deathless waters, shattered sacred guardians and braved 12 leagues of shadow. And now, at the end of his long path, the immortal looked at him not as a god, but as a man looks upon another man. Finally, Utnapishtim turned and began to walk. Gilgamesh followed. They came to a place of still water, surrounded by reeds and ancient stones worn smooth by endless days. Utnapishtim sat. So did Gilgamesh. The air was cool, yet heavy with memory. "You seek immortality," Utnapishtim said at last. "Do you know what it means to live without end?" Gilgamesh stared into the water. "I seek to avoid death, to escape the loss that took my brother." A long silence. Then, with a voice like a breeze over old clay tablets, Utnapishtim began to speak. Long ago, before the great cities, before even Uruk's rise, the gods met in council. The world had grown loud with mankind's clamour. The gods, weary of the noise, chose to send a flood and cleanse the earth. But Ea, the god of wisdom, whispered to me in a dream. He told me to build a boat, massive, sealed, and strong. I was to gather the seed of all life, my family, the craftsmen, the animals. The storm came, fierce and endless. The waters swallowed the land. Mountains vanished. Cities sank. Gilgamesh listened, held in the quiet grip of the tale. For 7 days and 7 nights the storm raged. On the 7th day, silence. The waters calmed. I released a dove, then a swallow, then a raven. The raven did not return. We landed on a mountain. I gave thanks, but the gods regretted their wrath. Enlil, the storm god, was furious I had survived. Ea calmed him, saying wisdom had found a way. And so, I was granted immortality, not as a reward, but as a burden. I was set apart, outside of time. Utnapishtim's eyes grew distant. And here I remain, while the world turns and forgets. I have watched empires rise and fall, lovers kiss and vanish, children be born and buried. Gilgamesh felt a chill. Immortality no longer shimmered like a treasure. It hung like a shadow. So you see, Utnapishtim said softly. Eternity is not a gift lightly given, and it is never meant for those who seek it. Still, Gilgamesh begged, is there no way, no secret? I would do anything to hold on to life. Utnapishtim considered. There is a test. Stay awake for 6 days and 7 nights. If you can conquer sleep, perhaps you are ready to conquer death. Gilgamesh agreed at once. He sat upon the shore, his eyes steady, his will sharp. But as moments passed, sleep crept in like a mist. His limbs grew heavy, his thoughts slowed. And before the first night was through, Gilgamesh slept. Deep, dreamless, defeated sleep. Utnapishtim watched with neither judgment nor joy. When Gilgamesh woke, he had no sense of time past. You have slept, Utnapishtim said gently, like all mortals must. Gilgamesh's face fell, and with it, the final thread of hope unravelled. But Utnapishtim was not cruel. He looked at the broken king and offered a quiet whisper of possibility. There is a plant. It grows deep in the sea. Its thorns sting, but its sap renews. If you can bring it to the surface, it may restore your youth. Gilgamesh's heart stirred again. Not immortality, but perhaps a beginning. And so, with stones bound to his feet, he dove into the cold dark, into the unknown. The serpent's prize. The sea gripped him instantly, cold as forgotten tombs, dark as a sealed fate. Gilgamesh sank, stones dragging him downward through the still and silken deep. Bubbles rose from his lips and vanished above him. His lion cloak floated like a ghost. Down he went, past silt and silence, past the trembling light where even the sun dared not reach. Here no sound lived, no fish stirred, just the pressure of ancient waters and the pulse of his heartbeat in his ears. He reached the bottom. There, nestled among jagged rock, coiled a plant unlike any he'd seen. Its thorns were sharp and pale. Its leaves curled protectively around a crimson center that glowed with a soft inner fire. The scent reached even through the sea, bitter, earthy, eternal. He grasped it. The thorns pierced his palms, but he did not let go. With a powerful kick, he surged upward. His lungs screamed, his vision blurred. But then air. He burst from the water, gasping, triumphant. The plant was his. Youth. Renewal. A second chance. Ushanabi, waiting on the shore, watched in quiet awe as Gilgamesh emerged. He said nothing, only helped the king ashore. The two sat beside the waves, wind tugging gently at their hair, the plant wrapped in cloth and resting beside them like a sleeping infant. Gilgamesh smiled, not with arrogance, but with peace. "This is for the people of Uruk," he said. "I will share its gift. The old shall be young, the sick shall rise." Ushanabi nodded. "You have changed, Gilgamesh." They began their journey back, the ferry gliding once again over familiar waters. The cursed sea did not seem so foreboding now. The wind carried the scent of promise. For days they travelled, and Gilgamesh kept the plant close, waking at night just to make sure it was still there. And then, a quiet evening, a spring, a place where birds danced above the water and the earth was soft with moss. They stopped to rest. Gilgamesh removed his cloak, bathed in the cool stream. Feeling lighter than he had in years, he laughed, for the first time in what felt like a lifetime. And while he laughed, while the water washed away the dust and the ache, something else stirred. A serpent, green-black and ancient, slithered unseen through the tall grass, drawn not by the king, but by the scent of the plant, sharp and irresistible. It struck. In a blink, the plant was gone, swallowed whole. The serpent coiled, shivered, and shed its skin, renewed. Then it vanished into the forest, leaving behind only silence. When Gilgamesh returned and saw the empty spot, the torn cloth, the winding track in the grass, he said nothing at first, just sat. The wind moved through the trees like a sigh. Urshanabi approached but did not speak. After a long while, Gilgamesh stood, slowly, his face unreadable. "It was not meant to be kept," he whispered. "Not by me. Not forever." He looked up at the sky, not in anger, but understanding. "I thought I sought eternal life," he said, "but perhaps what I truly needed was to live the life I have, to its end, with meaning." The path ahead waited, and Gilgamesh walked it, not as a man chasing shadows, but as a man who had touched them and let them go. The return to Uruk. The journey back to Uruk was long, but different. The wildness of the land still whispered and roared, but Gilgamesh no longer met it with restless defiance. He saw now what had been hidden by ambition and fear. Urshanabi walked beside him in silence. They did not speak much. There was nothing to prove anymore. No thunder in Gilgamesh's steps, only steadiness. No cry of conquest, only breath and thought. When the great walls of Uruk came into view, golden in the morning light, Gilgamesh paused. It was the first time in all his years he had truly looked at them, each stone laid with care, each tower standing like a monument to memory. He ran his hand over the warm stone. "These walls," he said softly, "they will outlast me. I built them so my people would be protected, but now I see they protect the story of who we are." Urshanabi nodded. The people of Uruk rejoiced at their king's return, but they saw something had changed. His eyes were calm, and his voice was quieter. He no longer challenged the gods in anger. He no longer chased shadows. Instead, he walked the city. He visited the old, the sick, the young. He listened to their stories. He gave his wisdom freely and ruled not with force, but with understanding. He told no one of the plant nor the serpent. He wrote his story down, not just the victories, but the fears, not only the strength, but the grief. He carved the tale into stone and clay, not to claim eternity, but to share it, so others might remember, so others might learn. Sometimes, at night, he still thought of Enkidu. He would sit beneath the stars and whisper to him, telling him what he had seen, what he had felt. Not with tears now, but with thanks. He understood, finally, that immortality was not to live forever, but to be remembered, to live a life that mattered, a life of love, of friendship, of building something that would last beyond breath. And so, the king slept better. He dreamed not of death, but of gardens and rivers and voices laughing in the dusk. And above Uruk, the stars continued their endless dance. The walls that remember. The seasons passed like clouds over water, softly, subtly, shaping the years. Gilgamesh ruled wisely now, not from a throne high above the people, but among them. His crown still gleamed, but it no longer weighed so heavily. He walked the gardens of Uruk with the same reverence he once reserved for the gods. He listened to the music of lutes drifting through the market. He held the hands of children. The people saw it, this change. They whispered of a gentler king, a man who bore pain like a lantern, not a sword. The scribes of the temple watched him closely, recording his words, his thoughts, the shape of his memories. It was through them that his story would ripple through time. He did not ask them to glorify him. He asked them to be honest. Write of Enkidu, he told them. Write of the one who taught a king how to be a man. Sometimes, in quiet hours just before dawn, Gilgamesh sat alone atop the walls. There he could see the city stretch beneath him, the soft orange light of clay lamps, the slow rhythm of life awakening. He would close his eyes and remember the wildness of Enkidu, the way the world shifted when they first met. He remembered the cedar forest, the monster Humbaba, the thrill and terror of battle. He remembered the bull of heaven, the fury of the gods, the still hush of death that followed. Every moment, even the painful ones, seemed sacred now. Every scar told a story worth keeping. A statue was raised in Enkidu's memory, not grand, not gilded, but true, made of river stone, eyes facing the horizon. The people placed flowers there. Children left pebbles. And though time began to etch its lines deeper into Gilgamesh's face, his spirit only deepened. Not darker, just fuller, wiser. He grew into age like a tree growing roots, strong and silent. One evening, under a sky flecked with stardust, he called his closest counselors to him. I have built a wall to guard this city, but it is not the stones that will protect us. It is what we remember. It is how we live. They did not answer. They only bowed their heads. Later, alone in the temple, he touched the first tablet of his story, the one with his name at the top. He smiled and placed it among the others. For a man cannot conquer death, but he can outlast it, in the hearts of those who remember. The quiet light. The night was cool, and the sky a tapestry of stars. A hush had settled over Uruk, the kind of quiet that only comes when the world knows peace. Gilgamesh walked its halls, now lined with frescoes and carvings telling the story of his life. He ran his fingers over one, a scene of him and Enkidu standing tall together. He paused, resting his hand on it. No sadness stirred, only warmth. He continued to the outer wall, the edge of his world. Below, the city rested. Beyond, the lands stretched into darkness and dreams. He sat beneath a fig tree, old and knotted like time itself, and closed his eyes, not in weariness, but in reflection. And in that silence, he felt it, not a voice, not a vision, but a presence, a whisper in his chest. It was Enkidu, or perhaps it was the memory of love, of shared joy, of journeys and laughter and loss that had carved his soul into something deeper. He thought of all he had seen, the divine garden, the scorched mountains, the whispering tunnel, the serpent, the stone tablets, the face of Utnapishtim as he told his story with tired eyes. He smiled. Let them remember, he thought. Let them remember what it is to live, to seek, to grieve, to grow. Far below, a child stirred in sleep. A dream began, a dream of gods and kings, of rivers and stars, of courage and longing. Gilgamesh sat until the stars began to fade, until the dark turned soft and silver, until the city of Uruk yawned awake again. He stood once more and turned inward toward the heart of his city, toward the light. Thank you for dreaming with us through Gilgamesh's midnight quest. If you found rest, or wonder, or simply a moment of peace, we'd be honored if you'd like or subscribe, but only if it felt right in your heart. Until next time, may the walls of your dreams be high and your sleep be deep. Good night.